Live. It's The Walking Dead, and we don't have any snappy music to play with it. Maybe you could hum along. Unless you've lived under a rock the last 4 or 5 years, you know what The Walking Dead is all about. You know about zombies. You know about Rick Grimes. Almost forgot his stage name. And what you don't know, probably, is The Walking Dead was adapted from a graphic novel.
That is, in fact, the key part of it. The Walking Dead, this was the compendium, actually. As you said, you know, it's adapted from a graphic novel, which they've had a huge success right now in movies with adapting from graphic novels. And it was only bound to happen that a TV show would come about. Little would we realize the impact it would have on not only the graphic novel industry, but the fact that how much it affected viewers who would normally not be into that genre getting attached just like that.
Yeah, it was written by Robert Kirkman, adapted for television by Frank Darabont, and I think I'm saying that right, and if I didn't, sorry, Frank. It's interesting because when I was young, a graphic novel was just called a comic book. Well, and that's what the compendium is, right?
Well, I mean, and the whole point of the graphic novel, the thing is, what it is the whole comic book name actually had such a negative connotation because everybody thought, oh, if it's a comic book, it's for kids, it's for the younger crowds. But in all reality, what they wanted people to understand is graphic novel could be anything. You're seeing adaptations now of great classic literature being turned into a graphic novel, or them taking the ideas of classic literature and turning it into a different universe of itself in a graphic novel. And you have great titles like V for Vendetta, which is one of the movies that was adapted. It's not exactly small, but a graphic novel tends to be bigger, whereas when you run into a comic book itself, yes, this is another quite large one. This is like 5 issues, though, that we're talking about at that point. So it's not even like, you know, you can still run into that issue where there's still small things, but just like with the Walking Dead compendium, The Walking Dead itself, the first season is probably this much of this book.
So basically, that compendium has almost all of the seasons in it thus far.
Well, actually, this one has the first 3 seasons very solidly, and I would say it's probably a toss-up between it being a solid of the 3rd season and maybe halfway through the 3rd season. So That's where you run into needing to get the second compendium, which I will get to. I just haven't actually finished reading this one yet. A lot of things on the plate. But one of the things I have done is I have flipped through just to kind of see how well it did track the show and things like that. And looking at the artwork compared to other graphic novels, which you can see here, it's not like they went to great lengths trying to make it ultra realistic or they went too cartoon with it. They found a nice medium place to actually hold themselves so they could keep an audience without that audience feeling like everything was put out in the plate for them. It's something that gives the audience still that chance for that imagination to work, where a traditional novel, that's all you have, is what you picture the author wants. And here, it's the author saying, hey, this is the idea, now you can fill in.
By the way, for those who don't know, I'm E.A. Lake, dystopian author, and on the other side of the screen is son number 2. Our Walking Dead, Game of Thrones, graphic novel, and all-round book expert in the family. Sorry if my daughter watches this. She feels she's the all-round book expert.
That is true, and I would never argue that. She is, in fact, very knowledgeable on books.
She probably hasn't read The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones yet, so what the heck. Anyway, so The Walking Dead is about zombies, and it's about Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, what a terrible place to be. Just terrible.
Zombie apocalypse has come, and these people are caught in Atlanta, Georgia. What are they to do? Because Atlanta, Georgia has what? What did I say before? 450,000 people in the metro.
Yep.
In Atlanta proper. 5.5 million, that's an M, million, well, it's not a B, that's good, in the whole metro, like a 9-county area. That's huge. That's a lot of zombies.
It is. It is. That's a lot of zombies to deal with. That's a lot of negative people to deal with. that's a lot of things that you don't necessarily know what's going to actually happen in that population depending on what the zombie is of your genre. For the Walking Dead zombies, what it is, we have a very classic zombie. We have a zombie who is, they're decomposing. They're not necessarily runners. Their biggest threats are going to be when they're in hordes, all of them moving in large herds almost. These are the things that, being in a largely populated area, are going to run into the issues that you're going to have in these situations.
And we'll touch on that in just a few minutes here yet.
Yeah, sorry about that. Getting ahead of myself.
But so far we've seen 5 seasons on AMC. And the first season only had 6 episodes, and that's not unusual for a television show. See if it gets off the ground, see if it gets any traction.
Exactly.
Apparently zombies took off, though. And I was never a big zombie guy. I'm a big humanity guy. How do people react during a crisis? And that's really what drew me in. But I know for you, it was the zombies at first.
Oh, 100% it was the zombies. I loved, always, since I was young, and the first time I ever saw Dawn of the Dead. Oh, man. I mean, you want to talk about some, nowadays looking at it, completely terrible cinematography. But it was so good and it was so scary. It scared me so much, but I loved it. And I loved the idea of zombies because it was this idea that you have to survive, and it's not an enemy that's going to outsmart you. Sheer numbers are going to overwhelm you at the end of the day. And it was just something that my brain really couldn't wrap around. So I've always been kind of fascinated by it, and I've obviously grown up where it's become more and more mainstream, and you have many great movies by George Romero. And he has so many, and they're so good. And it's one of those things. And even Simon Pegg has a great documentary right now that he's actually out on Netflix, if you ever get a chance to watch it, about zombies and about the movies that started the whole zombie fad and how mainstream it has become. And actually, I found it very fascinating.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Simon Pegg Shaun of the Dead?
Yes, and that wasn't so much. Everybody thought it was like, oh, this spoof to make fun of zombie movies. It wasn't so much a spoof as it was to just be a zombie comedy.
Ah.
It wasn't supposed to make fun of them. He truly loves the zombie genre and just wanted to do something that he knew he could do well.
Well, you can't blame him. I mean, I've seen both Dawn of the Dead and Shaun of the Dead, and I thought Shaun of the Dead was absolutely hilarious and a good comedy with zombies. So.
Exactly, and it wasn't, it's not like some of those spoofs that you get where you're watching and you're like, yeah, this is funny, but it's just so dumb. It was funny. It was, them going around acting like zombies to fool the zombies. That's just funny. That's good stuff,
Well, speaking of people acting in these things, I brought up here for us, and tell me, are you seeing Mr. Andrew Lincoln there?
Yes, I am. Not just am I seeing Andrew Lincoln, I am seeing, more importantly, the character he plays, Rick Grimes, with of course, his sheriff's weapon, the revolver. Which, by the way, maybe not your best weapon of choice in this situation. Finite amount of bullets in that, really slow reload speeds, not to mention super loud, super hard kickback. But Andrew Lincoln, like you and I were just talking about, is actually in Love Actually as well. And I actually almost didn't remember who he was. He is that guy who is the best friend and who is in love with Keira Knightley.
He shows up with the boombox and the cue cards.
Exactly.
Tell him it's Christmas carolers. Lie to your husband. It's me, your spooky lover.
Well, exactly. Talk about taking a movie that was supposed to be a romantic comedy and turning it into, hey, this guy's a creepo. What is he doing here? Like,
I believe you referred to him as a dirtbag in that movie before.
Yes.
Well, it's a good thing he's not the only star then. But okay, so Andrew Lincoln plays Sheriff Rick Grimes.
Yes.
And I'm not going to put any more pictures up for now. Some other notable names from the beginning. I mean, Andrew Lincoln is kind of where AMC put all their eggs in the basket. This was their big star. Michael Rooker, obviously, he plays Merle Dixon. He was in Cliffhanger and JFK. If you look him up online, you'll know who he is.
Oh, and not only that, you can say Cliffhanger and JFK, and some people are still going to be like, who is that guy? And then you're going to realize when you see him, he has had so many supporting actor roles that he's just one of those faces that you know the moment you see it, and you might not necessarily remember his name, but he does a fantastic job playing Merle Dixon.
Right. Yeah, I think, and though his role is limited, I think he does a great job. He's a perfect character actor too. So that perfect. Now, the other big name that you don't even know about, as we talked about before, is Scott Wilson. He plays gentleman farmer Herschel Green. That comes to us in season 2 at the farm. We go from the quarry to the farm to the prison to Terminus to Alexandria. That's seasons 1 through 5. But Scott Wilson actually played in a little movie called All the Right Stuff, and it was about the U.S. space race and breaking the sound barrier. And he actually, it was a good role for him. I've seen that movie a number of times. I can't tell you another role he's played because that's the one that always sticks out in my mind when I hear the name Scott Wilson. But
well, you're gonna have actors who are like that, and I mean, you gotta think about it. For my generation now, Scott Wilson is going to be synonymous with Herschel Green. It will be, because that is who we've seen him as, and that is who we honestly grew to love him as. Because he was a great character choice. I thought he did a fantastic job as well.
And oh yeah, Herschel is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah,
absolutely one of my favorite characters. Now, talking about favorite characters, I think you and I have agreed, and many people will agree on this, that Norman Reedus plays perhaps our all-time favorite character of any zombie show, Daryl Dixon.
Oh, what a great character he is, too. He is who you want with you. He is just warm-hearted enough to make people literally be like, oh, man, he's part of their group. He's part of that tight family feel they have. And he's still withdrawn enough to give you that mystery to think, man, like, well, what is he thinking right now? What is he honestly thinking? Because you never know what to expect with him, and each season you think you might see something different. And each season I think he's continually surprised us with how he has stepped up and how he has acted each season, how he reacts to people dying, to people leaving, things like that.
Well, yeah, and he the season, I don't know if it was just this last season or the season before. Season before, I believe, where him and Beth were so close.
Oh, great season. Yes. When they all split up right after the prison, and him and Beth were stuck together, and then Beth gets kidnapped at the end of that.
Yep, that's right. That was the end of the previous season. Here,
yes.
I have a T-shirt that this will help people look up what's going on with Daryl. Run like the zombies are behind you, and Daryl is waiting for you on his motorcycle.
I'm gonna have to get that from my wife now.
Yeah, yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yep. So we got Daryl Dixon. Yeah, he's probably our favorite character on the show.
Easily probably the only character you and I could truly agree on for that.
Because I have moments where I have Glenn and Maggie anxiety because I worry about them, but I know you're not Maggie's biggest fan.
I am not a fan of Maggie. I'm not, and it's nothing against the actual actress herself. I think she does a great job playing the character. I'm just not a fan of the character herself because I just don't feel like she brings enough to the table in this situation. Every time that you think, oh, she's going to be strong, she does something that you're just like, what are you doing? Or every time you think, oh no, she's gonna fall apart again, she goes off in another direction. You're like, what is going on constantly? And it's not a good type of like surprise. It's always like a come on, get it together, Maggie.
We did see at the end of season 5 that Maggie and the other gal and the preacher were sitting around in a circle singing Kumbaya together. So, the world is falling apart outside.
Well, and that is the one thing that I can say about her character that has been consistent is they introduced that right away, that, the idea of religion for her was such a big part of her character, which might be why she has so much turmoil throughout this entire time with the things she has to do and to survive and being with Glenn, things like that.
That could be. Now, we differ because I think Lori Grimes is a good character.
I think
watch yourself. I might be children watching this, so watch yourself now.
I think Lori Grimes should have gotten a bullet to the head when Rick showed up.
And Lori would defend herself by saying that she was just trying to repopulate the world, albeit she thought Rick was dead, or at least Rick's best friend told Lori, Rick is dead. And so,
he couldn't kill him. He couldn't bring himself to kill him, so he just left him there. He's dead. He's gone.
There's a guy we love to hate, Shane.
Oh, Shane. What a great character. He was a great character. He was that guy who you, especially in the beginning, like when those
call or something like that, right?
Those flashbacks with Rick and everything, where they're buddies and everything's good, and then him going to pick up Carl when Rick gets shot, like all these things that you're like, man, he's just a good friend, and then you see him with her, and you're just like, you're just a dirtbag. You are just a dirtbag, dude, because you still think even the first couple times you see them together that they're actually like, oh, he's only doing this because he was his best friend, and then you realize, no, he's had a thing for her forever.
Yep. Speaking of forever, that's one. You brought up a name that never seems to die, and that's our buddy Carl, played by Chandler Riggs, who, by the way, is a very good young actor.
Oh, very good. Yes. And I know you despise him.
I despise Carl. I mean, Carl has gotten more people killed than salmonella and diphtheria during the Civil War. So, I mean,
I disagree. I'm not going to say Carl makes great choices, and I'm not even going to say that Carl's a great survivor, that he is somebody I would want in my group. All I will say is that I think Carl is doing very well for the age he's at and the age he portrays. Like, his character is doing exactly what he should. My question is, why does he keeps doing this flip-flop, though, where he goes from being a little kid who is acting more like an adult to this kid who you expect to be an adult acting like a petulant child, and I do not enjoy that.
Teenager.
But teenage angst. You gotta think about it. He's a teenager now. He's got that angst.
Here we come.
Well, and I mean, that's why you see it with season 5. He gets that little girlfriend, and all of a sudden, all common sense goes out the window.
It's happened to the
like,
best of you.
Awesome.
Now, one of their big problems is that, as we started talking about earlier on, they stay too close to a major metro area. I mean, if you think about it, they just did a circle around Atlanta, for God's sake.
They did a circle around Atlanta. You think they're finally out of Atlanta, and then you realize where they are, and you're like, they're not even 30 miles from where they started. Their radius of where they scavenge food from, they can still walk back to Rick's hometown.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
Yeah,
I know. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, because, first of all, like we said, assuming that the zombies have taken 90% of the population, and that's certainly what it looks like on the show. You don't see that many live people. So there's 5 million zombies in the Atlanta area chasing them around in this circle around Atlanta. And there's got to be better places to go. Like I said, Wyoming has 500,000 plus people. North Dakota, 700,000 plus people. So where do they choose to go in season 5?
I just don't get, no matter what their reason is, Washington, D.C. No. Well,
the big tough military guy says, well, we're going to go there and we're going to get this thing fixed, and Dwayne, or whatever his name, who ended up being a fraud.
Yes, he did.
Was all about that. So they still, even though everything told them not to go there.
Yep.
What's his nuts shows up from, David or Marshall or whatever his name is, and takes him to Alexandria.
I was going to say Brian.
Yeah, he had a common name. I do remember that. Perhaps we should have made better notes for this one.
I'm thinking so.
Yeah, we'll have to make a note of that for the next time. But they just don't. They're going the wrong way again. They're heading towards, you live out in that direction. You live 5 hours from Washington or something like that.
Well, I
have to drive it, but
with the area they're talking about, Alexandria is essentially part of Washington. I mean, it's not. It's still technically part of Virginia, but it's very much so part. It's literally, if you're in Alexandria, you're in Washington, D.C. at that point.
You're on the doorstep.
The Beltway goes through Alexandria. You know what I mean? And
that's close.
the fact of the matter is, like, it's not an area. Even where I was living, which was 45 miles south of Alexandria, it was so populated that in that situation, immediately I'm heading towards the Midwest because the population density is just going to be so much less, and that's what you want in this situation. Not to mention, you want a place that has winter. You do. Everybody thinks, oh, but how will we survive in the winter? Well, you'll survive because the zombies will be frozen.
Now they may reanimate in the spring, right?
Say that
War
again?
Z didn't we learn in World War Z that they reanimated in the spring?
Yes, but how hard is it to deal with the fact that hey, so we walk our perimeters, we check our perimeters during the winter, and we can extend our perimeters in the winter, and then when springtime comes, we've already cleared all this area and put up better fences further out, so that when zombies do come, it's easier to detect them, take care of things ahead of time.
Well, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Thinking for the long haul, not for the moment. That's the difference here.
That's the difference. Survival is a long-term game, not just today's problem.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered pretty much everything I wanted to cover this time. Now, next time, if we look at our cheat sheet, we're going to talk about Walking Dead Part 2, some of the problems. What does The Walking Dead really mean? Problem 2, who can we trust? If we remember back to season 3, 2 or 3, 3 I think it was, Woodbury seemed like such a... that's just a little, Problem 3, of course. Which Rick Grimes are we going to get today? Because I'm telling you, for as many seasons and as many episodes, there's that many Rick Grimes. Wouldn't you agree?
Let's not forget, though, season 2, at the end of the farm, was probably the best Rick Grimes we had because he was the one that he's going to take no crap from anyone. He's the leader, and everybody's doing it his way, or get out. You know what I mean? And that's what you need. That's what they needed for at least 3 seasons, and we did not get that.
Right, that's true. Another thing we're going to talk about is all that we've lost, and that will kind of lead us in August. When you visit in August, we're going to discuss Game of Thrones, and something that The Walking Dead and the Game of Thrones are very good at is don't get too attached to anyone.
Oh no. Nope.
What's that? Eddard Stark's on the cover of season 1 of Game of Thrones. Sorry if you
I'm still positive Sean Bean has an obsession with playing roles where he doesn't have to do the end of the movie. They just can't afford him for the end of it.
Wait, did that happen in
every movie I've seen him in lately?
What about that James Bond movie?
They killed him off for, yes, once again, the entire middle of the movie.
Okay, yeah, so. And then we'll get to some of my why questions. Why did Lori have to die? Why did Herschel have to die? Really, why did Beth have to die? I mean, we're going to have to, let's get to that one. Let's put a teaser out there right now. Why did Beth have to die?
More importantly, why did Daryl not become a leader in some way, in a major way? Or, let's not forget this one on the Beth, why did Beth have to die? Why didn't Daryl and Beth get together?
That's true.
They could have led the group together. I'm going to get ahead of myself if we start talking too deep in that one.
Yeah, that's true. But we'll go on and on. We'll talk a little bit more next week. And until then, this is EA Lake and son number 2. And we'll see you next week with more on The Walking Dead.